I wasn't supposed to be home early that night. The day had been dragging. One of those Fridays where nothing urgent happens but everything still feels heavy. Around 4:30, a client canceled our call. Just like that, my afternoon opened up. My boss told me to call it a week, so I packed up, grabbed a coffee for the road, and figured I'd beat the traffic home. The plan was simple. Surprise Emily with Thai takeout from that place she liked, maybe catch the game in sweats, and just unwind. That plan died in our driveway. I noticed it before I even pulled in. A sleek, dark sedan parked where my car usually goes. Not a neighbor's. I knew every car on this street by now, and this one didn't belong. Shiny rims, tinted windows, clean, like professionally clean. I slowed down, heart suddenly thudding harder than it had on the drive. I eased in behind it and parked on the street instead. For a full 10 seconds, I just sat there in the driver's seat, holding the steering wheel with both hands like it might steady me. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe someone was visiting. A delivery guy. Someone dropping off papers? But the thing was, Emily hadn't said anything about company. And she normally would. Especially if it involved someone she worked with. She always gave me the heads up, even if it was just, hey, Rob's swinging by to grab a folder. Or, Lisa might drop off something for Monday. This wasn't that. The sun was low, casting that golden light that makes everything feel both warm and unreal. I got out of the car and walked slowly toward the house, scanning the driveway, the porch, the front window. I was looking for something. I didn't know what. A clue? A shadow? I didn't find anything. Not yet. Inside, the air felt off. Still. Too still. I paused at the door after closing it behind me, listening. No music. No TV. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that hums in your ears when your heartbeat gets loud enough. The house smelled faintly of something sharp and unfamiliar. Not food, not candles. Cologne? Not mine. I knew my scent, the kind that clung to my jackets or the leather seat in my car. This wasn't it. This was smoother, more chemical, almost metallic. Whoever wore it, they were still lingering. I moved through the living room slowly, noticing the details I usually overlooked. The throw pillow was on the floor. A wine glass, empty, sat on the end table, no coaster. There was a smudge on the rim, like from lipstick. Red. Emily hadn't worn red lipstick in months. Upstairs, I heard something. Faint tap tap tap. Typing. Fast. Then silence. I climbed the stairs one at a time, deliberately quiet. It felt ridiculous, like I was sneaking into my own house. But something in my gut was telling me not to announce myself. Not yet. The bedroom door was half closed. Light spilled into the hallway in a soft rectangle. I pushed it open gently. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, facing the window. Her back was straight, phone in hand, typing something like her life depended on it. She was dressed in something formal. A midnight blue dress, silky and fitted, something I'd only seen once before, at a wedding. Her hair was curled, her makeup done in that effortless way that takes an hour. She didn't hear me at first. Or maybe she was pretending not to. I stepped in and set the takeout bag on the dresser with more force than necessary. The rustle made her jump. She turned quickly, eyes wide for a moment. "Nate? You're home?" she said, blinking like I'd appeared out of thin air. "Yeah," I said, glancing at the clock on the nightstand. "Client canceled. Thought I'd surprise you." Her smile was too quick, too practiced. "That's nice," she said, and then added, "I was just getting ready." "For what?" She hesitated just long enough to register. "A video call. Rob wanted to go over Monday's pitch. Last minute." I nodded slowly, but my eyes weren't on her. They were on the chair in the corner. Draped over the armrest was a jacket. Charcoal gray. Slim cut. Not mine. The collar was popped slightly, and a set of car keys sat beneath it. I recognized the brand Audi. "That his?" I asked. Emily followed my gaze, then gave a short laugh. "Yeah, Rob. He left it here. Earlier." "In our bedroom?" I asked. I didn't mean for it to come out that flat. That dead. She shrugged like it was the most normal thing in the world. We were working up here. Better lighting. And the Wi-Fi's better, remember? Right. The Wi-Fi. I kept staring at the jacket. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to confirm it was still warm. That the cologne in the air was coming from that fabric. Emily stood, smoothing the fabric of her dress like she was suddenly self-conscious. She moved too fast, stepping between me and the chair, like she was blocking it. "Nathan," she said, voice harder now. "You're giving me that look again." "What look?" "Like I've done something wrong." Her tone sharpened. "Jesus, can't a coworker stop by without you acting like I'm cheating on you?" That word. She dropped it too quickly, too defensively. I hadn't said anything. I hadn't even implied it. "I didn't say that," I murmured, but she kept going. "You've been like this for months, always assuming the worst. It's exhausting." I said nothing, just looked at her. Not angry, not sad, just watching. She shook her head and turned away, arms crossed tight against her chest. "Maybe you should work on your trust issues before jumping to conclusions every time something's out of place." And there it was, the deflection, the attack, the sudden pivot to my supposed flaws. It was classic Emily, the version of her that only came out when she needed control back. A redirection, but something about her voice cracked when she said it. Just the tiniest bit, like a hinge under strain. I stepped over to the chair, close enough to smell the jacket. That scent again, stronger now. I could picture the guy, probably tall, probably smug. Probably not thinking twice about walking out and leaving a piece of himself in my home. I didn't say anything else. I didn't have to. The silence did the work for me. Emily turned her back, like the conversation was over. She picked up her phone again and scrolled. Deliberately this time, like it was meant to show how unbothered she was. But her fingers trembled. I stood there for another minute, then turned and walked out of the room. I went downstairs, grabbed the takeout bag, and sat at the kitchen table, eating cold pad thai and replaying every frame of that scene in my head. She didn't come down. Later, I passed the bedroom again. The jacket was gone, but the smell, his smell, still clung to the air. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my eyes open, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling. The space beside me was empty. Emily had stayed in the guest room to give me space, she said. Truth was, I didn't want her there. I couldn't imagine lying next to her while pretending things were normal. Because they weren't. Not anymore. Something had cracked open the moment I saw that jacket. Not just suspicion. Not even jealousy. It was recognition. Familiar signs I'd ignored for weeks suddenly clicked into place, forming something that felt undeniable. Pattern. It's wild how your brain rewinds things for you once it senses betrayal. Like a projector playing clips you didn't ask for. I started remembering all the little shifts. How she started sleeping with her phone on silent. How she used to leave it charging in the kitchen at night. But lately, it never left her side. The way she'd smile at texts and then quickly swipe them away. The way her lock screen never lit up unless I wasn't in the room. Or how she always came back from the gym looking perfect. Fresh hair, flawless makeup, like she just stepped out of a salon instead of a workout. I remember asking once, "You even break a sweat?" And she just laughed and said, "Cardio doesn't always mean a treadmill." Back then, I thought I was just being overly sensitive. Now I realized I'd been giving her the benefit of the doubt while she was rewriting the script behind my back. Then there were the excuses. Meetings that went late. Networking dinners that dragged. Evenings where she'd disappear into the bathroom for nearly an hour, supposedly on a Zoom call for a women's mentorship program. Who holds a Zoom call in the bathroom, with the door locked? I remember one evening, a couple of weeks ago, we were supposed to meet my brother for dinner. She showed up late, 30 minutes late, and said traffic was awful. Her hair was flawless. Her perfume was different. New, floral, expensive. Not the one I bought her for her birthday last year. She claimed she'd gotten a sample from a coworker. Said it was some French brand she couldn't pronounce. I nodded. I wanted to believe her. I chose to believe her. Now I was seeing all the signs I hadn't let myself see before. Even the restaurant charges. A place called Beryl and Thorn had shown up on our joint credit card twice. Once on a Tuesday, once on a Thursday. We'd never been there together. I looked it up that night. Some new place downtown with candlelit booths and live jazz. Not the kind of place you go with coworkers after a long day. That was a date spot. I asked her about it once. She shrugged and said, "Team drinks." It was Rob's birthday. Always Rob. He was her default scapegoat. The same guy whose jacket had been in our bedroom just hours ago. My chest tightened just thinking about it. Even at family dinners, I started noticing how distracted she'd become. At my mom's house last Sunday, she barely touched her plate. She kept glancing at her phone in her lap, trying to make it look like she was bored instead of preoccupied. My mom asked how work was going, and Emily gave a vague answer, "Busy, but good," and then excused herself to take a call. She was gone for 20 minutes. When she came back, her lipstick was smudged, and she looked distant, disconnected, like she'd left part of herself somewhere else and didn't know how to bring it back. And still, I said nothing, because saying something would make it real. And once it was real, it couldn't be undone. I sat up in bed around 3 a.m., drenched in sweat. The silence in the house felt like it was pressing in from all sides. I could hear the tick of the thermostat, the hum of the fridge, and nothing else. I glanced down the hallway toward the guest room. Her light was off. Her door was closed. She was asleep or pretending to be. I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that she was lying to me, or the thought that she had gotten so good at it that I could barely tell anymore. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through old photos. Pictures of us on trips. Smiling selfies from the beach. Her leaning against me on the pier last fall, wearing that mustard-colored sweater I loved. We looked happy. Or maybe I just did. It was getting harder to tell. I swiped through the pictures like I was trying to find proof that our love had once been real. Something that would explain how we ended up here. But all I saw was a version of her I didn't recognize anymore. Someone I couldn't reach. At some point, I ended up downstairs in the kitchen, standing barefoot in the dark, staring at the tile floor like it might offer answers. I thought about texting her. Just, "Who is he?" But I didn't, because I didn't want to know. Not yet. Not like that. Around 5, I finally crashed on the couch, fully clothed. When I woke up a couple hours later, the house smelled like coffee. She was in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened, wearing leggings and a hoodie, hair in a bun, pouring coffee into the travel mug I got her 2 Christmases ago, like it was any other Saturday. "Morning," she said, casual. "You sleep okay?" I blinked at her, too stunned to respond. I expected her to say something about last night, about the jacket, the tension, the fight she tried to manufacture before shutting me down. But nothing. She just stirred creamer into her mug and grabbed her car keys like it was a normal morning. I followed her with my eyes, waiting for her to acknowledge any of it. "You heading out?" I asked finally, voice groggy. She didn't look at me. "Yeah, bar class at 9. Then maybe brunch with Maya." Maya. Another convenient alibi. Maya was always in the loop, yet mysteriously never available when I reached out. I hadn't seen her in person in over 4 months. Emily kissed me on the cheek before I could pull away, and then she was gone. I stood there long after the door closed, the scent of her perfume still hanging in the kitchen. Not the French one. A different one today. Something lighter. New. I looked around the kitchen and saw it, her phone charger, coiled neatly by the outlet. She'd left it behind. That never happened. That phone was her lifeline lately. Always in her hand, always glowing. That's when I knew. I knew something was happening. I didn't know what it was called yet. An affair? An escape? A slow unraveling? But I knew this. I was no longer part of the world she lived in. I was the shadow she walked past on her way out the door. And for the first time, I stopped blaming myself. It was raining that night. Not a downpour. Just a steady, deliberate drizzle that made the streets slick and the air feel colder than it was. I remember watching the drops slide down the window pane like they had somewhere to be. Unlike me, I was just stuck. Emily said she had to work late. "Client meeting," she told me. like she always did when she needed to disappear. She said it with that same breezy tone, like it was no big deal. Like I was supposed to nod and accept it and go on with my evening, as if I weren't slowly unraveling from the inside out. By then, I'd stopped arguing. What was the point? Every time I asked even a slightly probing question, "What client?" or "Will you be home late?" she'd recoil like I was accusing her of something heinous. Her favorite line lately was, "I hate that you always assume the worst." No, Emily, I didn't assume the worst. You taught me to. That evening, I watched the clock more than I watched the game. I had the TV on mute, a beer in my hand I never really drank, and one eye glued to the time. 7:15, 8:03, 9:26. No texts, no updates, just silence. Around 10 o'clock, I sent a message I'd been composing in my head for hours. Simple, just 6 words. Say hi to John for me. I didn't even know a John, but I wanted to see what she'd do. I wanted to see if guilt would trip her up. I pictured her staring at the screen, heart racing, wondering which excuse would land best. She didn't reply. 10 minutes, 20, 40. Then, around 10:48, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen, and I hesitated before answering. My pulse was already racing. "Hello?" I said flatly. "Why would you say that?" she asked, voice already shaking. "That thing about John. What is that supposed to mean?" Her tone wasn't confused. It was wounded, defensive. So I asked the question calmly. "Wasn't he the client you're meeting tonight?" There was silence on the line. A long one. Then came the tears. The shaky inhale, the tremble in her voice. "Nathan, no. It's not like that. John is just a colleague. You're twisting things. Again." I didn't respond right away. I could hear her sniffling through the receiver, like that might soften me. Didn't. Something inside me had calcified. "I'm not twisting anything," I said. "I'm asking a question." She stammered something about confidentiality, how she couldn't disclose client names, and that she was just doing her job. I hung up while she was mid-sentence. My hand shook as I set the phone down. Not from anger, from adrenaline. My body knew what my heart hadn't wanted to admit. I needed proof, not suspicion. Not feelings. Evidence. I opened our shared banking app. It was mostly normal. Groceries, gas, a couple fast food charges. And then I saw it. A fresh charge, time-stamped at 8:22 p.m., for the Halstead Inn. A boutique hotel just outside the city. A place we'd only ever been to once. Our anniversary 2 years ago. She had loved the clawfoot tub and the fireplace in the room. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the details. There was the confirmation. Room 214. 1 night. 2 guests. I grabbed my coat. The rain hadn't stopped. My tires hissed over the wet roads as I made the 40-minute drive to the Halstead. I didn't call her again. I didn't want more lies. I just needed to see. I parked across the street. Her car was there, tucked neatly beside a black sedan. The same one that had been in our driveway a week earlier. That was all the confirmation I needed. But still, I sat there. My headlights were off, engine idling, windshield wipers swiping away the mist in perfect rhythm. I looked up at the hotel, at the warm yellow light glowing from one of the windows on the 2nd floor. Curtains half drawn, shadows moving behind them. 2 figures. They weren't rushing. They weren't sneaking. They were comfortable, like they'd done this before. At one point, the light flickered. I saw them clearly, her silhouette leaning close to his, arms brushing. Then they both vanished behind the curtain. That moment broke something in me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drunken one-off or a misunderstanding. This was routine. A second life she was living outside the edges of mine. And I was done begging to be a part of it. I sat there for a while, long after the light in the window went dark. I imagined them asleep in that room, curled up in the same sheets she once called ours. I thought about the way she used to laugh when I surprised her with takeout, the way she used to tuck her legs under her on the couch. I wondered how many of those things she was now doing with him. Then I thought about the way she lied to me. So easily, so sk*fully. The guilt never cracked her mask until I forced it. Even then, it was a performance. An apology scripted for damage control. I drove home slowly, rain tapping against the windshield like it was trying to warn me about something I already knew. Inside the house, everything felt colder. Her scent still lingered in the hallway. A half-drunk mug of tea sat on the coffee table. The book she was pretending to read was open to the same page it had been on for weeks. I walked into our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Felt different. The mattress dipped on her side the way it always did. But now, the impression left behind felt more like a void than a presence. I opened her closet, scanning the hangers. Some of her nicest dresses were missing. Her black heels. The clutch she only used for special nights. I stepped into the bathroom and found her lipstick on the counter. The shade was called Romance. A deep red she hadn't worn for me in months. I picked it up, stared at it for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't want a shouting match. What I wanted was distance. And for the first time, I understood that I had the power to take it. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the dark living room, listening to the wind push against the windows, and waited for the dawn. Because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The morning after the hotel confirmed everything. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't flip furniture or demand answers. I didn't leave a dramatic voicemail or even wait for her to come home. I just packed. It was quiet, methodical, deliberate. The sun hadn't even come up yet when I unzipped my suitcase and started choosing what to take. Not everything. I wasn't interested in a war. Just the essentials. A few shirts, jeans, underwear, socks, my old hoodie, and the sneakers I'd worn on our first hike together. I took the basics from the bathroom: razor, toothbrush, deodorant. Left the cologne she'd bought me for our anniversary. I didn't want to smell like the version of me that believed in her. There was no anger in my hands, just a heaviness. My body moved like it already knew what I was doing before I gave it permission. A part of me had already left. I was just following the rest of myself out the door. I grabbed the spare key from the hook in the kitchen. Hers was still on the ring. I slid it off and placed it gently on the counter next to the coffee pot. For a second, I stared at it, the tiny thing that used to mean home. Now it was just a tool for someone else's convenience. I grabbed a notepad from the drawer and scribbled 6 words. You wanted space, now it's yours. No signature, no threat, just facts. Then I picked up my duffel, walked out the door, and didn't look back. I didn't even slam it. I closed it slowly, like I was trying not to wake a sleeping memory. The sky was still dark when I hit the highway. I had no destination at first, just a way. I drove south. The roads were empty, like they'd been waiting for me to finally get in the car and go. Mile after mile, the city behind me disappeared in the rearview mirror. So did the weight on my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove. By noon, I reached Charleston, where my old friend Derek lived. We hadn't spoken much in recent years, not since college, but I knew he'd answer if I called. And he did. Come by, he said, no questions asked. You can crash in the spare room, for as long as you need. His place was quiet, tucked off a back road near the water. Nothing fancy, just a 1-story house with creaky floorboards, a leaky faucet, and a garage full of tools and grease. But it felt honest, worn in, real. Nothing about it was pretending to be more than it was. I settled into the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling and feeling the emptiness of being somewhere new. But even that emptiness felt better than the lie I had been living in. Derek didn't pry. He offered me a cold beer, pointed to the couch, and flipped on a game. We didn't talk about Emily that first night. Just sat in silence, side by side, like men do when one of them is bleeding and doesn't have the words for it yet. The next morning, he tossed me a pair of gloves and said, "Come on, let's get you under a hood." That's how I started fixing up old cars in his garage. Not for money, not even as a project, just for the rhythm, the noise, the smell of oil and metal. It grounded me in something physical, tangible. something I could touch and understand. Unlike her, I kept my phone off for the first 3 days. Not silent. Off. I didn't want to see her name. I didn't want to hear her voice explaining something that couldn't be explained. I didn't want fake apologies, rehearsed excuses, or guilt-fueled promises. I wanted silence. And that silence, at first unbearable, eventually became a kind of peace. No buzzing notifications. No unexpected texts. No veiled guilt trips. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I remembered what it felt like to be alone without being lonely. Derek's house didn't smell like her perfume. It smelled like oil and old wood and bacon grease in the mornings. I liked that. He had a beat-up radio in the garage. No Bluetooth, just static and scratchy stations. I found one that played nothing but old country songs. Not the pop country garbage, but the real stuff. Steel guitars, heartbreak, grit. Men who sang like they'd lived it. I found comfort in that. Sometimes I'd lose hours under the hood of a '68 Mustang. Hands black with grease, forehead dripping with sweat. No one asked where I was. No one needed me to explain myself. I didn't have to pretend. Not for Derek. Not for the cars. Not for anyone. Every evening, I'd shower off the grime and sit on the back porch with a glass of whatever he was drinking, usually cheap bourbon. We'd watch the sun go down without saying a word. Those evenings did more for me than therapy ever could. One night, maybe a week in, Derek finally asked, "You tell her where you went?" I shook my head. No point. He nodded like he understood. Because he did. I don't know how many days passed before she finally texted. It was late. I was eating cold pizza on the hood of a Chevy when I turned my phone back on. 8 missed calls. 4 voicemails. A string of texts. "Nate, please, just tell me you're okay. Where did you go? Can we talk? I didn't mean for it to happen like this. You didn't even say goodbye. I miss you. Please, let's fix this." I read them all. I didn't reply. What could I say that wouldn't already be a lie by omission? The version of me that might have fought for her was gone. I left him behind with the coffee pot and the spare key. She had made her choices. And now I was making mine. The silence used to feel unbearable. Those first few nights in Charleston, when the garage was dark and the tools were quiet, I'd lie in bed and feel it pressing on me. This weight I couldn't shake. I kept waiting for a sound, a buzz, a message, anything. I didn't want to admit it, but part of me still expected her to call at 2 a.m. Crying, apologizing, saying something that would undo everything. But the calls stopped, and the silence stayed. At first, it was heavy, like carrying a backpack full of bricks I didn't remember picking up. My chest felt tight for no reason. I'd breathe in, and it wouldn't feel like enough. Some mornings, I'd just sit on the porch steps for 10, 15 minutes doing nothing but trying to remember what it felt like to be okay. But somewhere along the way, that silence stopped feeling like punishment. Started feeling like air. It was space. A quiet that didn't demand anything from me. No lies to decode. No moods to tiptoe around. No anxious scanning of her face, wondering if she was mad or distracted or just somewhere else in her head. No more wondering who she was texting. No more decoding just a friend into don't ask questions. No more nights spent waiting for footsteps in the hallway that came too late, smelled too sweet, and moved too carefully. There's a peace in not expecting anything from anyone. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting on her. I started sleeping better. Not at first, but gradually. My body stopped jolting awake every 2 hours. I wasn't dreaming about the hotel window or the way her voice cracked on the phone. Instead, I'd fall asleep to the sound of crickets outside and wake up to the smell of coffee Derek brewed before heading to work. He'd leave a mug for me on the kitchen table. No note, just coffee. It said more than any text could. I found a rhythm. Wake up, shower, coffee, garage, tools in hand by 9, elbows deep in carburetors by 10, music playing low in the background, Fleetwood Mac, Johnny Cash, Springsteen. Songs about love gone sideways and men picking up what pieces they had left. Felt honest. Some afternoons, I'd take long drives down back roads with no destination. Windows down, sun on my face, hands steady on the wheel. No GPS, no missed calls. Just the hum of tires on the pavement and the occasional burst of wind through the trees. That silence? That stillness? It wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. When you've been lied to long enough, even the truth starts to feel suspicious. So I stopped chasing answers. I stopped needing to know who he was or how long it had been going on or what she said to make it feel okay. None of that mattered anymore. She had her story. I had mine. The difference was, I didn't need to tell mine to anyone to feel better. One morning, maybe 2 weeks in, I caught myself humming while organizing a set of wrenches. Just a low, unconscious sound. Something simple. And I realized I hadn't done that in years. Not since before things started unraveling. Not since I was the kind of man who expected joy without having to explain it. It wasn't all easy. There were still moments when the grief would sneak up behind me and knock the wind out of my chest. Like when I saw a couple at the gas station laughing over a spilled drink. Or when I passed a bakery that smelled exactly like the one where we used to get cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. But those moments didn't last as long as they used to. I let them come. I let them pass. And they always did. Derek didn't ask many questions, but one night, after we drained a bottle of beer each and were halfway through another, he looked over at me and said, "You seem lighter." I thought about it. "I think I am." He nodded, didn't say anything for a minute, then added, "That's the part they don't tell you about. After the hurt's done with you, what comes next? You walk around expecting pain. But sometimes what you get instead is space." "Space?" I repeated, letting the words settle. He tipped his bottle toward me. To rebuild, to breathe, to find out who the hell you were before someone started chipping away at you. That stuck with me. I had spent so long making room for her moods, her stories, her needs, her disappearances. I didn't even realize I'd erased parts of myself just to keep the peace. And now, piece by piece, I was reclaiming them. I started cooking again. Badly at first. Burnt eggs, underseasoned chicken, toast that somehow managed to still be cold in the middle. But I kept trying. And eventually, it started to taste like something. Not gourmet. Not impressive. But mine. I started reading again, too. Pulled an old copy of Into the Wild from Derek's shelf and read it on the porch over the course of a week. I forgot how good it felt to get lost in someone else's story. Especially one about starting over. About choosing the wild over the familiar. I got a haircut. Nothing dramatic. Just cleaned up. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I half recognized. Someone who looked like he'd stopped asking for permission to exist. Emily texted again the following weekend. "I saw a photo of us from last fall. I missed that version of us." I stared at it for a while. Didn't reply. Later, another one came. "You're really not going to say anything?" Still, I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't miss that version of us. Not anymore. Because that version of me was constantly giving, constantly bending, constantly afraid of rocking the boat in a sea she was already abandoning. This new version, he was learning to stand still, to breathe deeply, to let go. And the more space I gave myself, the more I realized I wasn't afraid of silence anymore. I welcomed it. Because silence wasn't empty. It was honest. Emily came back to find half the closet empty, the drawers half full, and the echo of her name in a house that no longer felt like home. My mug was gone. So was my presence. The note I left, "You wanted space. Now it's yours," still sat yellowed on the table. She called, texted, posted old photos like they were spells to bring me back. I never replied. Silence became my answer. She was finally alone, with nothing but the truth she ran from. 6 months later, we crossed paths at a conference. I stood taller, steadier. She smiled like it meant something. I didn't smile back, just nodded to a colleague and walked away. Her expensive dress couldn't cover the hollowness in her eyes. The room quieted. She finally realized. She hadn't just lost a husband. She'd lost the last person who believed in her. I didn't need revenge. She was already living with it. That was enough.